Many opportunities stay open for one simple reason. Nothing clearly defined is supposed to happen next. The conversation is still alive. The lead has not disappeared. No one has said no, so the opportunity remains visible inside the pipeline. From the outside, that can look acceptable. The case is still open. The relationship still exists. There is still some possibility. But possibility is not progression. An opportunity only moves when the next step is clear enough to create real momentum. Who is supposed to act? What exactly needs to happen? When it should happen? What condition will prove that movement actually occurred? Without that, the opportunity is not advancing. It is only remaining present. This distinction matters because many businesses confuse open status with active progress. They see a live conversation and assume the case is moving. But if no concrete next step exists, movement is being imagined, not managed. That is where pipeline quality starts weakening. The opportunity still takes space. It still influences forecasting. It still affects attention. But it is no longer producing enough direction to deserve that weight. A clear next step does more than keep activity going. It turns attention into structure. It makes progress visible. It makes ownership visible. It makes delay visible. And without that visibility, an open opportunity can remain in the system for far longer than it should, while everyone assumes that momentum still exists. This is why a next step should never be treated as a small administrative detail. It is one of the clearest signals that an opportunity is still alive in a meaningful way. Without it, the pipeline may still look active, but what it is really holding is unresolved potential without enough direction to trust.
What makes this problem dangerous is that unclear next steps often feel harmless in the moment. Nothing has collapsed. The lead is still responsive enough. The relationship does not look broken. So the business allows the opportunity to stay open without pressure. But an open opportunity without a clear next step does not remain neutral. It slowly loses meaning. One person assumes the lead will reply when ready. Another assumes someone else is following up. Another thinks the case is still healthy because no rejection has happened. This is how drift begins. The opportunity stays in the pipeline, but no one can say with confidence what should happen now, or what would count as real movement from here. That weakens accountability. A pipeline becomes harder to trust when opportunities stay visible without a defined action attached to them. Because now status is no longer enough. The business needs direction. A strong next step creates direction by answering a few critical questions. What is the immediate objective? Who owns it? What timing makes sense? And what outcome would show that the opportunity has truly progressed? Without those answers, follow-up becomes vague. The case remains open, but the logic around it becomes soft. That softness matters because it turns pipeline management into interpretation. People start reading possibility as if it were momentum. But momentum without a next step is fragile. It cannot be measured clearly. It cannot be protected easily. And it usually weakens faster than the business realizes. This is why every real opportunity needs more than visibility. It needs a defined path for what should happen next. Otherwise, the pipeline keeps carrying opportunities that are still present, but no longer structured enough to move with discipline. A clear next step also changes how the business reads momentum. Without one, an opportunity can look alive simply because contact still exists. A few messages are exchanged, a response arrives eventually. The relationship has not closed, so the case continues sitting in the pipeline with more credibility than it may actually deserve. But contact alone does not prove progression. Progression means that the opportunity is moving toward a more defined condition. Something specific is being advanced. A call is being scheduled. A decision is being reviewed. A proposal is waiting on a known response. An internal discussion is supposed to conclude by a certain point. That is very different from a case that is merely still open. This distinction protects judgment, because once the business starts requiring a real next step, it becomes easier to separate active opportunities from passive ones. Now the pipeline is not only showing who is still there, it is showing what is actually moving forward. That improves prioritization. A case with a clear next step deserves a different level of attention than a case that remains open without enough direction. And that difference matters because pipeline energy is limited. Time, follow-up effort, and decision quality should not be distributed evenly between opportunities that have structure and opportunities that only have residual possibility. This is why a next step does more than keep the process organized. It protects the meaning of the pipeline itself. Without it, open status becomes too easy to maintain. With it, movement becomes easier to recognize, delay becomes easier to name, and real opportunity health becomes much easier to trust.
This is also why a missing next step damages more than follow-up. It damages decision quality. Once an opportunity stays open without a clear action attached to it, the business loses one of the most useful signals for understanding what is really happening. Now, no one can say with confidence whether the case is progressing, slowing, or simply remaining visible, because no one has forced clarity yet. That uncertainty spreads. Forecasting becomes softer. Priorities become less stable. Pipeline reviews become more interpretive. Attention gets pulled toward what still looks possible, not necessarily toward what is still moving. A strong next step prevents that. It creates a test. If the action happens, the opportunity has progressed. If it does not happen, something important becomes visible. Delay, loss of urgency, weak ownership, unclear readiness, missing commitment. That is valuable information. Because a pipeline should not only store opportunity names, it should help the business read condition. And condition becomes easier to read when every meaningful opportunity has a defined next step that can either happen, stall, or fail clearly enough to guide the next decision. That is the real benefit. Not more activity for its own sake, but a pipeline that becomes easier to manage because each open opportunity still carries enough structure to produce evidence, not just hope. Without that, the business keeps looking at open cases without knowing which ones deserve confidence and which ones are only surviving through lack of definition. A clear next step also improves accountability because it makes ownership harder to hide. When an opportunity is open but nothing specific is supposed to happen, responsibility becomes vague. Someone believes the lead will come back. Someone believes follow-up can wait. Someone assumes the case is still healthy because no visible problem has appeared. That is how opportunities drift. Not through rejection, but through absence of direction. A next step prevents that drift by making the opportunity answerable. What exactly are we waiting for? Who is responsible for moving it? When should movement happen? What result would prove that the case is still active in a meaningful way? Those questions make the pipeline sharper. Now the business is not only tracking which opportunities still exist, it is tracking whether each opportunity still carries enough structure to deserve active confidence. That changes behavior. Follow-up becomes more disciplined. Reviews become more useful. Stalled cases become easier to identify. And opportunities that no longer have a real next step become harder to confuse with opportunities that still have momentum. This is why every opportunity needs more than open status. It needs a next step clear enough to keep movement real, ownership visible, and confidence earned. Without that, the pipeline can stay full for a long time while becoming less useful with every opportunity that remains open without direction. When every real opportunity has a clear next step, the pipeline becomes easier to trust. Not because every case moves quickly, but because every case now has a visible direction. That is what matters. A pipeline should not only answer who is still in conversation, it should answer what is supposed to happen next and whether that movement is still realistic. Once that standard exists, the business stops confusing open status with progress. An opportunity without a clear next step is no longer treated as if it deserves the same confidence as one that is moving through defined action. That improves discipline immediately. The team can see which cases are active, which are drifting, and which are only staying open because no one forced clarity soon enough. That is the real value of a next step. It turns possibility into something operational. It gives the pipeline more than visibility. It gives it direction. And once direction is visible, decision-making becomes lighter, follow-up becomes sharper, and the business becomes much less likely to mistake unresolved potential for real momentum.